Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. Today we're going to discuss creating an inclusive experience for students, and this is part of our week of education for National Inclusion Week. Before we get started, I'm just going to run through some housekeeping points for this webinar, and then we can get introduced to our guests. Everyone, as you can see, is on mute. This is to avoid background noise. To enable live captioning, please click the live transcript button at the bottom of the Zoom screen, then press show subtitles. Questions can be asked via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll collect these all together and we can discuss them at the end if we have some time. If anyone does have any technical difficulties, please just shout in the chat. The team will be able to help you as best they can. The webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. And if anyone didn't sign up or you want to listen to it again, this link will be sent over to you. Today's session will be interactive using polls, so please get involved, and I hope you enjoy this webinar. So let's start off with a round of introductions. I'll get started and do this myself first, then we'll say hello to everyone else. Hi everyone, my name is Michael Halpin, and I'm head of marketing for Recite. Over the last 3 years, my eyes have been open to the world of accessibility and inclusion, and it's amazing to see so far the developments many organisations have had within this space. And I really am proud to work in an organisation that helps people every day. Alex?
Thanks, Michael. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex Buck. I'm the Digital Director for Concept 4. We're a branding, digital and creative agency working largely in the UK market and most specifically in the education market. Today I'm going to be talking about accessibility and specifically towards websites. Thank you.
Hi, afternoon everyone. My name is John Brennan. I'm the founder and director of Good Consulting. We are a education focused communications agency, and I'll be chatting about comms and EDI. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. So today marks the 10th anniversary of National Inclusion Week, and something that Recite always gets involved in. This year, the theme is around the time to act and the power of now, and this is exactly what all educational organisations should be doing, attracting and supporting the most diverse range of students from around the world. Before we deep dive into the conversation with our guests, I'm just going to run through a few facts and figures around inclusion and disabilities and within the educational space. So before we go into some education facts, I thought it'd be best off sort of setting the scene with the people that we need to support around the world. I won't read everything out here, but it goes beyond just people with disabilities, inclusion. From 13% population that don't speak English as their first language could be a number of people that we're trying to help. And then when we look into these online, it goes beyond that, where some shocking sort of statistics around 49% of disabled people feel excluded from the site because they're condition or impairment. So once again, online, we need to be able to provide the information that can help everyone. And then so within the education space, we can see that international students plays a big part. And with being organisations trying to be inclusive, we need to be able to help over 500,000 people in that space. Then when it comes around to dyslexia and other disabilities, we can see it as a larger percentage of students that we really need to support online, more than I thought once of. And I'm sure that these statistics are, sort of eye-opening for you also. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump in and we are going to look at some polls before we get started with some comments. And if we can fly off the first poll, please, Laura. To get you guys involved, what percentage of school children in the UK are dyslexic? And a fact for you guys, it is I'm actually dyslexic myself. Something that I was never diagnosed at school. It's just something that with joining Recite, it was noticed through Ross and did some tests, and that was an an eye-opener for me there when I found out that actually it was something that had been troubling us my whole life, but got to the cause of it. So let's see what the answer says to that. So yes, correct. 68% of the audience have said 10%, and that's right. So 10% of students within education do have dyslexic, and I could imagine in reality there may be a lot more. And our second poll, and within the UK, how many college students speak English as a second language? So 53% have said 400,000. It's actually 500,000. And once again, this plays into the communications and the way we support students from an international perspective to be inclusive in our education processes. So if we take a look at our equation, usability plus accessibility equals inclusion. And let's put this into practice. Alex, please could you share with us some of the considerations and benefits of building a website with accessibility baked in from the start?
Thanks, Michael. Just started the screen share for everybody. So thanks very much. I'm going to talk a little bit now about understanding websites and mobile app accessibility and some best practices that will go along with that. So this is really just an introduction to accessibility regulations for public sector bodies. I'm conscious that there's a cross section of people in the audience here, so you may be classed as private sector, you may be a charity, but you should comply with the public sector equality duty. The regulations are building on existing obligations to people who have a disability under the Equalities Act of 2010 or the Disability Discrimination Act of 1995 for those in Northern Ireland. And the full and bit of a mouthful name for these regulations regarding to accessibility online is the Public Sector Bodies, brackets, Website and Mobile Applications, brackets, open brackets, #2, brackets, Accessibility Regulations 2018. The long and the short of that is this is legislation that's been in place since late 2018 and was enforced during 2019. So it's been around for quite a while now. It's not a very exciting topic, but it is extremely important to be aware of and equally important to start taking some actions if you haven't already done so. So specifically, we're looking for the education sector, as the bulk of our audience here today, to meet the international WCAG level AA accessibility standard, where WCAG stands for Website Content Accessibility Guidelines. Again, a bit of a mouthful. So the guidance says you must make your website more accessible so that people can use it regardless of how they use the internet. So that may be people with impaired vision, motor difficulties, cognitive impairments, deafness or impaired hearing. So those are some of the types of views that we're dealing with here. And then just to know that I am going to be specifically talking about websites in the main today, but do note that if you have intranets, extranets, websites that feed off your main website or a mobile app, they are all covered by this same legislation. Okay, so what are the main considerations when we're looking to meet the standard WCAG 2.1 level AA? The first thing to say is that this is not just something that you push on to your web agency or your internal development team if you use that. This is for designers and developers, but it is also for your website editors and managers. They all play their part in this. So from my point of view, we'd always start with your brand and your brand guidelines. Although your logo itself doesn't need to meet the standard, the associated colors and fonts that you use do need to meet the standard. So we'd always start our design process with an accessibility review of your brand. At a very basic level, we're showing brand colors and any associated color palettes that you're using alongside your brand colors, how the use of those in a design can provide a suitable color contrast ratio when you're using it with things like text. And there are certain ratios that need to be met for level AA. I won't go into the finer points of that too much, but I will show a couple of examples of some brand guideline documents in a second. So WCAG 2.1 is based on 4 design principles. and there is loads and loads of reading online. If you go onto gov.uk and search for accessibility for public sector organisations, it's all there. 4 design principles: that's perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. That's quite hard to take in without demonstrating examples, but I'll try and illustrate a few points here. By focusing on principles and not the actual technology, this is emphasising the need to think about the different ways that people are going to interact with the content on your sites. For example, a user may not be using a keyboard, may not be using a mouse, and how do they navigate and operate your website without using those controls? In a development sense, once the website's been built, there are ways to test your website using online tools that are free and readily available. There's a extension for Chrome that you can plug in that will test all your website templates and show how it meets certain standards. And you can also do a lot with user testing. So if you get a good cross-section of users and you have a good cross-section of devices that they're testing your website on, handheld devices, PCs, etc., then you're going to get good feedback from that as to how people are finding the operation of your website, and very specifically towards the design elements that people are seeing and the navigability, is that a word? The navigation of your website. Then coming on to your role as editors and managers, this is where you play your part within the content. So write in plain English, use simple sentences and bullet points, describe your images. So what I mean by that is use alt text, so slightly techie term there, but within your content management system, you will be able to write a text description for each of your images on the website. So for somebody who's using the website and has images turned off, they will still get a text description of what the image portrays. And that's obviously not just the image number or image reference that you've uploaded. Make your buttons descriptive, write descriptive hyperlink names, and don't just write click here, because that does not describe what you were getting when you click the button. And finally, make your PDFs accessible. So this is probably a non-issue for people who've been making PDFs recently, but if you have any older PDFs on your website, let's say they predate 2018 and haven't been updated since then they're probably not readable by a screen reader, and therefore there's an accessibility concern there. And lastly, always include and update an accessibility statement on your website, telling people how you are meeting the WCAG level 2.1 AA standard, and also where you're not. And that'll be things like videos don't currently have transcripts, but you can create a plan for how you're going to deal with that in time. So here's an example of brand guidelines for a project we have currently with an organisation called Mary Ward. They supplied a very comprehensive brand guidelines booklet to us, but it didn't include anything for online. So we've gone ahead and created our own branding accessibility review. Hard for you to see on the screen there, but you will see how we've used their brand colours, and we are showing how that is going to work with white text over it, black text over it, and then we have a proposed colour palette that we can use going forward for the website. Here's an example of some branding we did for Manchester Hospital School. We weren't doing anything website based for them. We weren't their website developer or website designer, but we did put in an accessibility section for online use into their brand guidelines. You see this very, very rarely, and I think it should be something that everybody does. So what we're looking for here is using the brand colours. You can see on the screen there, and we've got an easy reference guide for the organisation to use, so they can tell what colours will work well when they use them online. Okay, so in terms of testing and reporting, what can you do? Some really obvious stuff here, but whether your website is brand new or it's a few years old, carry out an audit and identify any issues in an accessibility sense. As I mentioned before, there's plenty of free resources online to do this for you, or you can contact your web agency and they should be able to produce a report for you. Following that, prioritize and fix. Now, a ruling called disproportionate burden may mean that you don't have to do these things all at once, but if you can chip away at them, prioritize the main issues that you need to deal with, color contrast being obviously a real big one, and start to fix those issues. Also, if you're going to go down the route of a new website or a new app for the organization, understand WCAG and the current standard level A 2.1. The content is going to be a key factor in that, and that's going to be down to your editors. So it's not just a case of writing one line in your tender document to say the website must meet WCAG 2.1 AA. It is down to you guys as well as editors and managers to look after that content and make sure you're doing some of those things I mentioned earlier in terms of how you place content onto the website, and then monitor that over time and make sure you do regular checks. So you may have a website that's 100 or more pages. You don't need to check everything, but at least choose a cross section of pages and website templates and check everything over. So finally, what are the benefits of a robust approach to accessibility? There's loads of stuff. So for start off, you're going to create an inclusive approach to your audience. That can only be a good thing. If you're reviewing and improving your site, then your user experience and quality assurance will be improved. And you could well argue that this could lead to more conversions, whatever a conversion means to your website. Your brand and reputation will be enhanced by your inclusive approach. Ofsted and other governing bodies will note your efforts to improve accessibility. And at the very least, if organizations are coming onto your website and reading your policies, and any of those are in PDFs, then they will at least see that your PDFs are accessible if they have such a need. Your SEO, so that stands for your search engine optimization, where you come in the rankings of Google and other search engines. I mentioned before about adding something called alt text, alternative text to your images. So if you have missing alt text in your images on your website, that will affect your rankings in a relatively minor sense, but it will affect your rankings. So if you do propose to use relevant alternative text for your images, for people who have images turned off, then that can be a boost, a nice little boost to your search rankings as well. And then lastly, your readiness for WCAG 3.0. I can't profess to know a great deal about this, but there is a working draft of that already online, last updated December 2021. So it's been around a good while now, and that will become the new standard to replace 2.1 in time, and it will incrementally increase those requirements of people like yourselves to do certain things in an accessibility sense for your website. So last of all, I've been through some stuff really quickly there. If you've got anything that are burning questions based on your own organization, more than happy to field your questions now or offline after the webinar. And we're just going to have a quick poll, if that's all right. Thank you. So I understand that this is quite a generic question, so apologies for that, but do you consider your website or websites accessible for people with disabilities? And I do caveat this question because I understand that the audience we have today are not necessarily at the coalface of their website in terms of a development or content sense. But if you have a feeling as to whether your website does or does not tick these boxes, then please say so. Okay. So what can we glean from that? 4 out of 10 think that their website does meet their accessibility requirements. I totally understand those that have said not sure, which could mean a number of things, but possibly means that actually the person who's answered the question doesn't know because it's not their remit, or they're not sure because none of the tests I've been talking about have been carried out, or maybe the website's a few years old and the accessibility regulations haven't been factored into the way that the website is put together. So that's good to know, but I think there's definitely some mileage there in the 6 out of 10 there that have either said no or not sure to have a good and valid conversation internally or with organisations like ourselves about what you can do about it and some quick wins and fixes. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to pass back over to you now. So the other side of the coin that we're going to talk about now is usability. And Michael's going to give us some examples relating to the founder of Recite Me, Ross, who was diagnosed with dyslexia and didn't have that ability to get involved in the digital world at the time when he was growing up. And I think Michael's going to talk a little bit more about that and how Recite Me was born out of that just now for us. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Alex. Is it possible to stop sharing your screen there, please? And everyone can see all our lovely faces. So yes, thanks very much, Alex, for that. Very, very insightful. I think it's everything you said. It was spot on around about making accessibility from the start, from your alt text to your approach for an experience, how it's designed was great. And accessibility in education has always been at the heart of Recite Me. And as he said, it's massively connected to Ross Linnett, our founder's story. Ross was at university and was talking in a presentation on a board, and someone found out a few mistakes on the board and thought, I think Ross is dyslexic. So Ross had a conversation with this person, had some tests and things, and lo and behold, was diagnosed with dyslexia, which is crazy all the way through university to get into this stage, and was given some support on his computer where he was. But then as soon as he went into any other room and used a computer, that support that he relied on to read large bits of text or to look at complicated sentences or questions was taken away from him. So through friends and a business idea, came up with putting the emphasis of making websites usable on the organization, not the person. And over the last 10 to 12 years, Ross has built up this toolbar, Recite Me, and has worked with partners and organizations to make sure this toolbar is as best it can be to help as many people. Like the accessibility inclusive world, everyone's learning, toolbars are always getting better, but ultimately it's a set of tools or a suite of tools to help people online. For instance, myself, I would use Screen Reader 9 times out of 10. Easier for me to digest that content. For Ross, it would be a black background with yellow text, or like we're mentioning in the facts and figures, someone might want to change it to a completely different language and have that language spoken out to them. So through reading aids, styling changes, translation, the Recite Me toolbar is able to help a user through their journey online. And one thing we love to see is the actual feedback from people using the toolbar. A student called Sophie reached out to Recite Me after hearing a podcast that Ross was on, and ultimately she had just started university, and the amount of text and information she had to consume and read was just so much overwhelming, and it was getting her down. She didn't know what to do. So she reached out to Recite, and we were able to help her with our software. And you know, it's on our website for anyone to read if they wish, but her feedback was fantastic. We helped her with her university Kickstarter into something from a negative to a positive, and things just like adjusting the page colors that helped her read out and easy to enable studying for longer lasting. And in her words, she was awfully grateful for that support. So having a website that's accessible and built right, but also having a website that has these tools that makes it usable, takes it that one step further, that enables someone to customize their experience, is massively beneficial. And like I was saying, we want to help people. That's what Recite Me do. And in the education sector alone, we've helped over 1 million people with the toolbar on educational websites in the last 12 months. So it's fantastic to see that core idea of an experience from Ross developed into a tool to help in real life people in the educational space really is helping. So yes, usability and accessibility massively come hand in hand. So yeah, making a website accessible and usable is a no-brainer, but inclusion goes beyond that. It goes into a full ED&I strategy for every educational organisation. And this is where John is going to come in and help us our next part of the journey around communications.
Thank you. I will try to magically share the screen. Give a second, everyone. Okay.
Hopefully do better than me, John.
Well, you never know. This looks encouraging. Here we go. Slideshow from the beginning. I'll ask them now the traditional question. Can everyone see that? Yay! Fantastic.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, thanks for joining us. And I'm going to take probably a wider look, really. Clearly, the guys have been talking quite a bit about websites and accessibility and inclusion from that technical point of view. But what I wanted to do was have a chat really about what we want to do as a communications function in relation to these like the reputational and real-time benefits of an EDI aligned communications strategy. Sounds a bit posh, but all we're really talking about is looking at how we're building in equality, diversity, inclusion into the way that we talk about ourselves as organizations. And so we picked out 3 specific bits there. We talked about corporate reputation. We're going to talk about staff recruitment, and we're going to talk about student recruitment. That's a lot of information, that you'll be putting out into the world will really sit within those 3, particular strands, if you will. But I know there's 1 or 2 people on here today who I've worked with and currently work with in the past, and they won't be surprised when I pop this slide up, which is my belief and my philosophy is that an organisation communications is everything, really. And I've picked up this graphic from an organisation which I'll credit towards the end as well. But the graphics is it is a really good graphic representation of the characteristics around EDI. And if we're thinking about corporate reputation and an equality and diversity inclusion agenda, but I think, well, why do we really want to have a think about why we want to communicate this? So there's a really, really simple solution to this, which is why we're going to do this, because it's the right thing to do, but also because it is the law. I've popped up a graphic here that we'll have a look at again in a little while, and the credits at the bottom. And when we get to the end as well, and obviously within the material send out, I'll send you a link out to this brilliant study that really does look at how particularly teaching staff, and this was in schools, are made to feel around diversity and equality and inclusion. And so if we think about corporate reputation, which is really important for obvious reasons, but we'll look at those in a minute, really, we can't really think that we're having an effective corporate operation if we think that most staff, for instance, do not feel their workforce reflects the student body. Or indeed that people who are disabled or minority ethnic, etc., are less valued in the workplace. There's a whole host of reasons why we need to deal with this, but one of them is, as I say, around the corporate reputation. And why else? Is because you've pretty much all said that you're going to pay proper attention to equality, diversity, and inclusion. You'll all have some sort of equality statement on your website somewhere, I'm sure. And most, if not all of you, either will explicitly state or will allude to equality in your vision, your values, or in your mission statement. So if you're going to have any corporate credibility, and if you profess to be a values-driven organisation, you absolutely have to work EDI into everything that you do, and you have to communicate it. Clearly, it needs to be driven by your vision and your values. And there's a little bit of, okay, so aren't we just almost playing lip service if we feel that we, are just having to demonstrate this as opposed to actually doing what we're doing. And yes, that would be tokenistic. But if you say you're values driven, and if you say that you want to be some form of equality within your organization, then you've really got to work hard to demonstrate it. How are you going to do corporate reputation and EDI communications? Well, thinking back to the slide that we just looked at before, if communications is everything, then everything that you do, that you state, is comms. So therefore, even something as we might say as important, but also maybe a bit dry, like policy and procedure, is that's how you're actually going to evidence what you believe and what you do. So are your policies correct, but are they explicit? Are they available? And are they celebrated? Because if we want to make sure that people understand that we are taking EDI very seriously, for lots of good reasons, then we need to make them aware of what our policies are, and we need to shout about our policies to say, look, we've got these, that would be great. But remember that policy is not procedure. Are your procedures informed by your policies? Do you have the evidence? Okay, and comms is all about evidence. It's all about saying, this is what we do. Here is some people telling us about how we do this. Here is some statistics about how we can prove this is a thing and this is real. But also we're going to need to look at some training and awareness. How able are you to communicate your commitments? Have the right resources? And so by that, it's both a case of saying, okay, do you have the right communications resources? For instance, have you worked hard to make sure that you have got the right language in place? Have you worked hard? Interestingly, when we were talking about content on the website, I often think about the quality of the prose and making sure that the message is clear and inspirational, as opposed to whether it can be read well through one of Recite's toolbar widgets. But nonetheless, is that language in place? And also, if you have a communications infrastructure, how aware are they of your EDI commitments? Because what we often see is a disconnect between perhaps vision, values, policy and procedure through to, again, people who are actually enacting communications, whether that's a marketing manager, a marketing executive, someone who's involved in PR. Are they aware of this? And indeed, to flip it on its head, if you make them aware, then at least they can then say to people who are writing policy and procedure around things like this, oh, we make more of it. External communications, is there a specific strand of your corporate communications dedicated to EDI? So looking back again to what I've just said, is that if you create space for a theme, for a strand, then you will fill that strand. And so therefore, the actual creation of that will mean that you can talk about that positively. You will go and find information. You will go and find the evidence. Or are you at least conspicuously and effectively communicating what your values are? And that means if you've got some values, then shout about them very loudly and in effective ways. Because if you have a value around equality, and I guarantee somewhere or some link to that will be in one of your values, is that you need to communicate all your values anyway. That's just the standard for corporate comms. And you do need to do that. And so therefore, if we're really talking well about our values, and you will be able to say, yes, here it is. And there we go. The next bit, do you have the evidence base to show that you were doing what you will say that you will do? Okay, so again, back to evidence. Look within your organization to find that evidence. Guess what? The evidence is lacking, and that will mean that you're not actually doing it properly. Okay. And then again, specifically related into Alex and Michael's world, technology and innovation, because we often see that these are the things, technology and innovation are the things that actually make things work and actually allow people into an organization and take part in that organization fully. So do you include EDI and related accessibility considerations in your digital development strategy? So when you sat there thinking about, I'm going to buy a new MIS, is accessibility part of what you're thinking about? So do you give parity to administrative systems, teaching systems, and communication systems when considering this? All this is related to comms because all those things are output of information. So then we can see how it falls through into staff recruitment and EDI. So why? Because in today's labour market, it's imperative that we remove all barriers to recruiting and retaining good staff, as well as being the law, etc. Again, looking back to that graphic, when we're talking about what people feel and how they are perhaps sometimes made to feel within an employment situation. Okay, so it's a massive existential threat in education is the ability for people to recruit and retain. Okay, we've got to get rid of any barriers around these things that don't allow us to keep on staff on target with staffing numbers and make sure that we have good quality recruitment and retention. So a diverse staff creates a richer environment for your students. It allows for better interaction on all levels with community stakeholders, reinforces and evidences your commitment to EDI, therefore enhances your corporate credibility. You can see what I mean about that communications is everything. It's so holistic. So again, pick up the same 4 themes: policy and procedure around staff recruitment. Are they explicit, available, and celebrated? When we're looking to recruit diverse staff, then let's say we're looking to recruit a diverse staff. Here is the proof within our policies. Remembering again, policy is not procedure. Are your procedures informed by your policies? Do you have that evidence? Right. We make sure that we employ X number of, or we had a target of employing X, and therefore we have evidence of doing Y. Training and awareness, again, same thing. How capable is your HR or your people infrastructure to act on your goals around KPIs? Around the goals and KPIs around EDI recruitment and retention. And do they have an understanding of the need for internal awareness and celebration around an EDI staff body? HR and people and comms need to be so close on lots and lots of different aspects of this around HR and comms and people, but especially around EDI. And again, external comms, is your EDI explicit and highly visible in your recruitment and retention comm strand? And if you've got an identifiable R&R comm strand, again, are you consciously addressing this strategy, visible and spoken representation? Outspoken in there as well, because it was really clear to me in my mind that around not all issues around EDI are visible. And so we might need people to tell their story. Because it might not be, immediately apparent. So again, videos, case studies, same thing. Are you around technology and innovation? Are you able to accommodate and allow for a full EDI staff to function? So again, administrative systems, teaching systems, communication systems, as well as physical. They're looking at student recruitment and EDI. Why? Because it's part of the overall moral purpose of education to be, to be equality and diverse and inclusive. And the communications and marketing are the levers to pull to create a more EDI student body. So how are we going to do that? Policy and procedure, same things again. So, but what does an EDI student body mean to your organisation and context? Because one organisation maybe that's already heavily involved in special educational needs, for instance, what does EDI actually mean in relation to that in their student body? And what does it mean to a grammar school in a largely affluent white area? What does it mean in an area of the country that might have a 100% South Asian population? So these are things that you need to think about because it needs to be representative as well as being being equal. So is the purpose local representation, therefore, or is it something led? I.e., are we doing it to be local or are we doing it to say wider than local? And again, how able are you to action a nuanced student recruitment campaign? Do you have the right resource? By that, again, nuance is saying, okay, how do we make sure that we are being visible in relation to our EDI targets, but not being tokenistic, not being flipping obvious? we're trying to, sort of go, okay, yeah, we definitely need this kind of student in our organisation. Let's put them front and centre in a very clumsy way. So again, how aware is your communications infrastructure of your strategy? Look at how that will work properly. Again, is EDI explicit and highly visible? And is it appropriate in your comms strand? Are you consciously addressing this through visible and spoken reputation? How able are you to accommodate and allow for a full EDI student body to function, EHCPs notwithstanding? And again, back to this thinking about systems, teaching, communications, administrative, how accessible are they? So really quickly to finish off, because I'm running over, I understand, and you would, I'm sorry. I wanted to look at maybe a couple of case studies really quick about how EDI communications can go wrong, and indeed what a good one looks like. Some of you in education, teachers will know the term waggle. This is not a waggle. There's a little progression here where we can see about maybe as an organisation that hasn't adopted in its true sense from its vision and values a stance, a understanding about what equality, diversion and inclusion means. So this is Pimlico Academy, not one of my clients, and if they're on the call, sorry, this is all public information. But you can see here on the first image, race in education, not seeing ourselves represented, Union Jack route at London school shows divides. So what this is about is a clumsy attempt to bring in an idea around British values without also bringing that into a more holistic EDI, in this case, race and culture context. This then mutated into ideas around second image. Pimlico Academy teachers walk out over chaotic management and safety concerns at school. And then the last part of this is then Pimlico Academy head resigns after race discrimination row. Okay, so this is a very pointy end around how we can start off with an organisation that didn't have EDI and how that then spiraled out of control. Georgina, who's on the call, will be super chuffed that I've picked out a Bright Futures Education waggle on this one. Specifically within one of the schools within Bright Futures Education Trust at Cedar Mount. They work incredibly hard to make sure that their incredibly diverse school does not suffer from some of the things that we saw from earlier, because they do have EDI at their very heart and their vision, their values, and they evidence it and work at it so hard. So we can see here the new Year 7 anti-discrimination group met for the first time today. Miss Morris, the anti-racist action report. So she's developed and publicly talked about a document showcasing all the anti-racist work that's gone on at my school over the last few years. Superb. And then at a corporate level, how the organisation's partnership with Carnegie Education at Leeds University, CRED, which is around the decolonisation of curriculum. Again, evidence, talking about it. Really good practice to get out there and talk about the things that you're doing. So a good place to start, I said that I'd pick up and big up where I got the various bits of information from, the graphic and the surveys, is diverseeducators.co.uk, where there's all kinds of things on there around diversity and EDI in education. So resources, glossaries, inclusive recruitment toolkits. So I think the guys at Recite will be able to pop out that link that we've got there. Thank you very much. And again, we've got some time for questions later, but if anything specific comes up, the information will be out there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, John. Much appreciated. I think we've been spoiled by the both of you from a website building communications point of view. It's been fantastic to hear some of them insights and information. it's opened my eyes, especially as well with a few pointers with my position at Recite here. So thank you for that. What we're going to end on today is a takeaway or a lasting thought that people can go away in action straight away. It can be something as little or as large as you think. Alex, should we start with you first?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. My takeaway is, I've already alluded to in my presentation, but it's a very easy one to action. Just taking a look through the attendees, there's a number of schools and colleges on here. So with respect to your brand guidelines, and I caveat that because I do know that when we work with schools, quite often they don't have brand guidelines. So there's a basic start point there for those guys to actually produce some brand guidelines. But for those that do have them, please just dig them out. They kind of get produced and then almost locked into room 101, but please dig them out. Please review what you've got and update it so that it includes a really simple to produce section that will relate to online use of your brand and colours. It's just an extra 2 pages into a brochure that you save off as a PDF, and then distribute amongst your staff or anyone who needs to use it. There are 1,000,001 online tools to allow you to do colour contrast checks in line with the standards. So WCAG 2.1 level AA, contrast ratios for colours. You're able to put in your colours in a Pantone sense, in a hex colour sense, however you've got your colours. It will tell you whether those are going to provide you with the right amount of contrast when you use them online. You can then obviously very easily check your website and any other resources you've got, intranets, extranets, mobile apps, and you know where you stand, whether it's something that you've got to deal with. If you're going out for a new website, then it provides a standard for the agency you're working with. So yeah, if anybody would like me to link with our preferred colour contrast checkers, then I'm happy to provide that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. A quick one from me. I'm not going to say look at Recite Me. I'm going to say around about more of a personal sort of fact or a takeaway would be around about the language that's used. So coming from the way I read content, I think something that's simple, designed, broken down, easier, something that can be, someone could read with ease and not feel overwhelmed. So space in between words, between paragraph, headers being used correctly, all that sort of simple stuff that we sometimes overthink or not think about when we're doing large bits of text. So just how is your information displayed? I think that would be a good start that people can then easily understand that information. John?
And mine, rather than a bit of advice, is a bit of homework. What I'd like everyone to do is to go away and walk through your organisation's staff recruitment process, wearing the hat of a candidate with a protected characteristic, and just see whether you are encouraged, whether you feel that it is a place where, as a person with a protected characteristic, that you would feel comfortable applying for a particular role, any role, and whether it's somewhere that encourages you and makes you feel like you would want to work there. And I think that's a really good place to start for EDI comms.
Thank you very much, John. We've also had a question for Alex as well. Alex?
Yeah, just saying that. Thank you, Michael. So the question is that I referenced PDFs and pre-legislation, these could be inaccessible. We advise against all PDFs online wherever possible. Would you say that PDFs post 2018 would now be considered accessible as a format? Wow, I could probably give a 5-minute answer to this. So would I say that all PDFs post 2018 would now be considered accessible? Probably not, because there's a number of factors here. First off, I'm thinking that it would largely depend on which version of Acrobat you're using. So if you're using a legacy version, then it may not have the same modern day accessibility tools built into built into Adobe Acrobat or whatever the PDF creator is. In terms of not using PDFs online, yes, that is a good solution, but in some cases that can be prohibitive. So if you've got an organization that has 15 or 20 policies to publish online, then it's unlikely that you'd want to put those at length onto the pages themselves, rather than having them as a download so that people can take those and read them offline as they would wish to. So I wouldn't be against using PDFs online per se, but it would be really easy to use controls that are built into modern browsers and so on to check whether those PDFs are accessible. So screen reading technology is built into most modern day browsers, if not all now. You could open up that PDF in a chosen browser, Chrome, Edge, Firefox, etc., and ask the browser to read out the PDF. If it does, then it's got some accessible tools built into it and is more accessible than something that will not read. I could probably go on and on, but I'm going to stop it there. If that's something that needs to be taken to an email conversation offline, then I'm more than happy to have a look or even test some of your PDFs for you.
John, I can see you've got your hand up there. Oh, you're on mute as well.
Yeah, sorry, just to dip in there as well. I referred to my point about do you have a comms infrastructure that allows you to be fully EDI? So, so comms infrastructure for me would be who's generating those PDFs, how are they being generated, why are they being generated before they even get onto your website? Deal with the problem upstream, and get people working on proper versions of kit, proper systems. So again, back to, are you considering what systems you're using to make sure that you can be fully, EDI compliant or ripped within your EDI? Get it upstream. Don't worry about it when it gets on your website. Get it sorted before it gets on your website.
Thank you very much. We've got one more question because I'm conscious of time. Hello, do you have any recommendations for getting content editor buy-in? It's one thing having guidelines and another thing people following them. So curious if you have any tips on getting people on board. Thanks. I suppose it's about processes again, I suppose, is it? Content, yeah. Back to processes, yeah.
Well, it depends where we say, what's a content editor? A content creator, a content editor should be, to a certain extent, someone who is involved in the communications infrastructure. So, take you back to, the point about, is your communications infrastructure aware of what your EDI targets are, your strategy, why? And so it is about inclusion, of those people, of the people who are doing the editing. It's about them understanding what it is that everyone's trying to do and why, but also moving it from a technical conversation into a values conversation, so that the people, when we're looking at content, and I think I said before, I look for content, the quality of prose getting a message across. So it's the balance between that and what technical things we need to think about in relation to EDI as well.
Yeah, so getting that's called that content editor bought into the reason why we're creating content like this, then obviously maybe a cheat sheet on how to create it, and then they can then add content, blogs for instance, making sure fonts are the right, or the color background, the contrast, or that image has alt tag, or there's underlining on links, etc., etc. So I suppose it's more like buying of why, and then a cheat sheet of things that they need to look out for when they come to create content.
Training and awareness.
Yeah, sorry if I could just, Michael, I'd lost connection there for a second. So thanks to John for picking that one up. But not having fully heard what John said, my take on that would be, this is a really easy thing to say, but is to keep the number of content editors to a minimum. Not to think that because you've got a website and because you can You have unlimited editors, and you can hand this out to every member of staff to look after their area of the website. That is a dangerous thing to do, purely because every single person thereafter will have their own way of writing. You're going to end up with so many different ways of writing content on the website that the tone of voice will be totally lost. So I try to restrict this to a small number of editors. If you do need to get content from people who need to get their content onto the website, I'd suggest that they're not going to do that live onto the website, that they supply their content into your much smaller team, into your marketing team, into the content editors, and then that can be sense checked offline in a Word or a Google document, and brought in line with content guidance for your organization's tone of voice, the way we hyperlink text, the way we structure the content, and so on, so that once it goes onto the website, it's been proofread and understood in an accessibility sense first.
Thank you very much, Alex. So I think we've hit our 1 hour. So what we'll do is we'll stop there, but I know there'll be a lot of information that's been shared today, which has been fantastic for everyone, from communications and build to usability and experiences. That's been really good. What we will do as a three, we will create now a document, a post-webinar guide and takeaway document that everyone on this call and who signed up can receive, or will receive, sorry. And then from there, there'll be information that either can help them or contact details that they can reach out to Alex, John, or Recite me. So I suppose it's just one thank you for everyone for joining us today. Thank you to John and Alex, and it's been a pleasure talking with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.